he's waiting there for 5 minutes, looking at the machinery, looking here, looking there, and the guy's leaning on the wall, doing nothing. This rich man who owns the empire, right? He runs to the guy, and he says, I can't take it anymore. You've been here for a few minutes, doing nothing. What do you make a month? What's your monthly salary? The guy starts stuttering. He says, what do you make a month? He says, $1,200. The guy pulls out a wallet, gives $1,200, counts, gives it, and now like, get the hell out of my sight. I don't want like people being here doing nothing. All of a sudden, the work manager approaches and, here's the whole thing. And he says, this is it. We got rid of this loser. He does nothing. So the guy says, this is the pizza delivery guy. He brought the pizza. He's waiting for a change. You just, the world is really, you could.
Looks like advice against impulsive action.
Right, no impulsiveness. Yeah, that's a good thing. So the world is splitting basically to two. Those who have the reasons to be happy, and those who don't have the reasons to be happy. Those who have a beautiful, wonderful life, like Richard Warner, for instance, who always wake up in the morning being thankful, being grateful for every minute. I kid you, and this is not joke. Every time I speak to him, he's full of delight and gratitude. Isn't it true?
I gotta stop that.
Really?
I got an idea too.
No, really.
How much do you make every month?
Yeah. Trust me, you can't afford it. So, and some people are stuck with their permanent frown, and they're not happy. We've encountered these people now and then. Steve, maybe you have encountered someone who's not very happy, and those who are stuck in their place, and they're usually upset and sad and full of complaints, and always something had happened to them, and somebody stepping on them and doing something wrong to them, and so on. And here, arouse our sages and announce out of nowhere, out of the blues, Mishenichnas Adar Marbin Besimcha. As soon as the month of Adar begins, we increase our joy. It doesn't matter where you are, what do you do, where do you live, how much you make, you have a family, a big family, small family. Our sages say, hold it, everything is stopped. Adar begins, you start being happy. I mean, it sounds nice on a bumper sticker, but what is the practicality of it? How could somebody forget everything and just adopt a smile and either pretend like or actually live like everything is okay? That's what our sages say with regards to the beginning of the Chodesh Adar. He's attracted Ta'anit. Rav Yehuda, son of Rav Shmuel Bar Shelat, said in the name of Av, just as when Av, the month of Av, begins, one decreases rejoicing, so too when the month of Adar begins, one increases rejoicing. And the question we're asking today is, how come? How could you instruct someone? How could you force someone? How could you expect someone to just forget of everything they knew before and just say, oh, the month of Adar began, hold it, now I'm happy.
I would like to understand it, maybe in context of rules of behavior. The decrease of rejoicing as when the Adar Av begins includes a very specific set of things you should do because of that.
Correct.
Maybe he means something like that.
So you're saying special kind of, but we don't find anything on the month of Adar that accompanies. You're right. How do you decrease your joy on Av? Certain things you refrain from. People don't get married on Av. People try to not make big parties on the month of Av. People refrain from starting new projects on the month of Av because it's a sad month. So what do you do on Adar that really reflects that joy?
There is nothing like that.
Right? Well, of course we have Purim, but soon we relate to it.
Now, Av in the summertime, isn't it?
Av is when you decrease. When you decrease the joy. Now you increase the joy. Yeah.
Increase the joy now.
Yeah.
Increase the joy in the summertime.
Yeah. Just that month of. So the question is not only on this, but also on life in general. It is expected by God that we would be rejoiceful, that we will be happy, that we will be always in a good mood. And Maimonides brings it as a law. Actually, it's one of the Jewish laws that all the mitzvot, all the commandments are done out of joy, out of simcha. It's not enough to do what you're told, but we're also expected to do it out of joy. Let's look at what Maimonides says in the laws of Lulav. No sukkah for you. The happiness with which a person should rejoice in the fulfillment of mitzvot and the love of God who commanded them is a great service Whoever holds himself back from this rejoicing is worthy of retribution. As Deuteronomy states, because you did not serve God your Lord with happiness and a glad heart. Maimonides says that in fact, not only are we expected to always be full of joy, but if somebody does what they need to do, they do what they need to do, but they're not doing on a happy note, then it is wrong, it is bad. And let's look at the Ramah says in the end of Shulchan Aruch, the book of Jewish law, the code of Jewish law, that's how the book ends. And he says as follows, the practice is according to the first understanding. There are those who say that one is obligated to increase in joy and feasting on the 14th of Adar 1. However, this is not the practice. Nonetheless, one should increase slightly their joy and feasting in order to fulfill the words of those who are stringent. But he that is of merry heart hath a continuous feast. That's a quote from Proverbs. As we studied last week, there's 2 months of Adar, Adar 1 and Adar 2. This is a leap year. By the way, as you know, the 12 months are 12 the zodiac, right? The 12 fortunes, right? But we, as Jewish people, we have such a thing called a leap year, where we have a 13th month. Now, as far as I know, the zodiac is 12, there's no 13th. So that means that this month is actually higher than fortune, higher than luck. It's beyond that, this whole month. So obviously, we know that this month means a lot. What, you wanted to say something?
Double parsha. Every 4 years you have double parsha. You read two in a row.
So with the leap year, since you have another month extra, you don't need double portion. Most of the double portion are read in regular years. But in a leap year, you actually separate. Otherwise, the reading of last week could have taken 45 minutes longer, because these are the two, the two longest. Now it's shorter because we have another month to stretch the weekly portion on. Now you're enjoying it. Now you're enjoying it even more. Anyway, Ramah says that you talk about whether you need to be happy on that day, you don't need to be happy on that day. Ramah says it's always good to be happy. V'tov le mishte tamid. That's how Shulchan Aruch ends.
So the kind of preview of Purim has no real Adar the first has no real celebration.
Right. That's the discussion that's brought in the Shulchan Aruch itself, or whether, of course, we practically we do refrain from saying Tachanun, and there is a little amount of joy that is celebrated on the 14th of the first Adar, and yet Ramah finishes, Rabbi Moshe Yisraelish, the main prominent Ashkenazi posek of Jewish law that ever lived, finishes his old composition on Shulchan Aruch with this statement, V'tov lem v'shtei tamid, always good to be happy, and it's good even when you're not sure, make sure you're happy. That's how the Ramah finishes. And the question is, how could really one just forget everything and become happy just because a date appears in a whole month? You'd say, be happy on an occasion, be happy in a party, be happy on Purim. But this is not an obligation to be happy on Purim. It's an obligation to be happy for the whole month. Now, holding your joy for a whole month really takes a lot of effort. How could really one be doing it? How could Maimonides say that if somebody doesn't do it, then they're doing something wrong? Okay, well, some days are like that. Some days are happier than others. So we want to really perceive what's going on. And here's what the Rebbe is asking. One could ask, I could force myself to perform a positive commandment or refrain from a negative commandment, but how can I force a feeling in my heart of joy? We're not pretending. We're not making believe. This is not about just pretend like you're happy. God is asking us to be happy. And the question we said, how could really one do that? And in fact, we want to try and understand what Judaism has to say on this. And once we do, it's not only a perception, it's actually a piece of news. So the month of Adar is different than all other holidays of the year. We have many holidays of the year, right, Josh? Many, not that many, but we do have a nice chunk of holidays. And that's when I used to see Josh, prior to the last few weeks. That's when I used to see Josh. That, how do you call it? Richard calls it high holiday. The people who come to say hi. Right? That's what I do. That's what you do, right? High holiday, high. So, I was kidding with you, Josh, because you know the Jewish holidays. That's when we see each other. So the month of Adar is different of all other months because we're asked to be happy for a whole month. Not just for the holiday, for the eve of the holiday, the day of the holiday, which is, of course, very joyous. Family comes together, community comes together. We have a lot of good Jewish food, and there's nice music and prayers and speaking and conversations and social activity. But this is a whole month meaning when you go to sleep, when you wake up in the morning, when you're having a mundane, regular day, just a normal, as we say in Yiddish, aposhete mitvoch. Just a simple Wednesday. It's just a Wednesday out of nowhere, and you're expected to be thrilled and happy and excited and full of emotion. How do you really get to that? How do you do that? Here's what the Tractate of Esther says, the scroll of Esther. And the month that was reversed to them from the grief to joy and from mourning to the festive day. So in the scroll of Esther, we said a happy month, not a happy day, the whole month. And what Tanit says, the continuation of what we said earlier, what Papa said, therefore, in the case of a Jew who has litigation with a Gentile, let him avoid him in the month of Av when the Jew's fortune is bad, and he should make himself available in Adar when his fortune is good. Now I told Ross this, that when we have something, a court case against somebody not Jewish, so we should do it in Adar. So he says, well, what if the non-Jew is right and the Jew is wrong? What then would you say? He was asking me about, because Ross is a lawyer, of course, and he wants to know what it means. But of course, this is not about who's right and who's wrong. This is about the gray area. You know, a lot of rulings nowadays, a lot of, in all court systems, in all court cases.
Even when it's wrong, the judge can punish differently if things are wrong.
Correct, right? To that.
Av is the good one?
Av is the not so good one.
When is the Av? Now?
No, Av is in the summer. Now is Adar.
So you should get, Adar is what you should really get.
That's what you sign a contract on and build Adar, okay? That explains my hastiness a bit. Yeah. And here's Shulchan Aruch, someone who is traveling and cannot take with him a Megillah could read it from the first day of the month. So Purim appears to be on the 14th of the month. Nevertheless, if somebody won't be on Purim in a place there's a Megillah, he could start reading it on the 1st of Adar. So 2 weeks prior to that, you already have the commitment of Purim. You could already start reading the Megillah.
The of Purim can be fulfilled on the 1st of Adar.
Correct. The Megillah reading. There are other commandments. Yes, absolutely. It is common practice. I know my friend in Saloniki, in Greece, they go around the Balkan states in those days, just as we are now, and they are traveling to far-off communities with a small amount of Jews, and they read the Megillah for them. I'm going to have to use it. I probably have to go visit someone in a correctional facility in prison, and I'm probably going to have to read the Megillah prior to Purim for this. Actually, the Megillah, how does it start? Megillah nikret b'yud aleph, b'yud bet, b'yud gimel, b'yud dalet, tet vav, right? That's the tractate of Megillah. Right, that's in the case of you won't have any choice, right?
No, the same person to read every day.
To read it, and then what? You do the same mitzvah. Once you do it once, you do it once. Okay. If that makes you happy, for sure. Then Megillah is the scroll of Esther. That's what we read on Purim. That's one of the commandments of Purim, that we need to read the scroll of Esther, reading the story that had transpired in the times of Shushan. This was Daled Alafim, right? What was it? No.
1,000 years ago?
Yeah, something like that, right? Between the first and the second temple. Just before the second temple.
Sometime between Cyrus and Alexander.
Yes, just before the second temple was established, right? It was 4 years before the temple was established. So it's a good few years ago.
You read the Megillah 2 weeks or so before.
In case you have no choice, you could. Yes. In case you have no choice. So we find we have some long holidays. Hanukkah, for instance, 8 days. Pesach, 7 days or 8 days. Sukkot, 9 days could extend. But 30 days of a holiday is really something exceptional we don't find anywhere. So that gives us a little bit of understanding that Purim is quite different than all the other holidays. The commandments of the holidays will begin 2 weeks prior to that. Actually, it does extend, according to some opinions, even after Purim. Of course, it extends 1 day after Purim for all the walled cities like Jerusalem that would have Shushan Purim. But also, even a few days after, you would still have an opportunity.
It's not a festival, though,
it is a festival made,
is not the Torah, though.
but it's conducted by the rabbis, by the rabbanim, by the chachamim, the sages.
I mean, does it have to? Who made it up?
They have the authority.
So it's a spring festival mostly, isn't it?
No, it's not. Purim is Purim. It's the day of Purim. As
spring
the
starts around in Israel.
I don't know if it has the spring festival. Does the Purim have spring festival elements in it? Pesach would have, yeah.
Pesach is spring. Oh, okay. And then
Yeah.
that was autumn, 40 days. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, that's good. You're asking the question. Okay.
How many days can you take off and not work?
Yeah. How many?
That gets that, right?
We get to how many days you can take off of work.
Yeah.
You get your boss to pay your monthly salary, kick you out of the factory, right? That's also something that could happen. So Rashi says, as soon as Adar begins, Mishenichnas Adar, Yemei Nisim Ayu Israel, Purim vePesach. Rashi says the days of wonder, days of miracles had happened to the Jewish people. Purim and Pesach. Rashi takes Pesach from the month of Nisan and brings it all the way to the month of Adar, and says we're starting a period of miracles. This is an era, a period of a miraculous time, a time of joy. Why? Because we had all these holidays happening. But of course, we know Pesach doesn't appear on Adar. It's a part of Nisan. And some people say that Rashi says that the start is straight of miracles. Sometimes when something good happens to you, it's nice. But when something good happens and another something good happens and another thing good happens, in a row, that encourages you to be even more excited than if they would happen separately, right? When you have a good day or a good week, good news are starting to come. Somebody's flying you in first class to Sydney to deliver a letter. It might happen, Sydney, what's the next? Oh, Tel Aviv. Somebody's flying you first class to Tel Aviv to deliver a little FedEx package. Okay, yeah. And then you win the lottery, and then you find a nice Jewish girl. You're getting there, Josh, aren't you? Well, if you're already in Tel Aviv, that's a good place to start. So that's what the Yava to say, Rabbi Yaakov. Rashi's explanation of Purim and Passover is since days of miracle have commenced. Otherwise, the days of Nisan and Kislev would count too. Otherwise, right? So if we say that days of miracles, so Passover would say that the whole month of Nisan, Kislev would say the whole month. Chanukah will take the whole month of Kislev. So the Rebbe explains something else. He says we have another thing that happens on Adar. What happens on Adar? The 7th of Adar. The 7th of Adar is the birthday and the passing day of Moses. You know Moses? Our friend Moses. Oh, okay. Well, there's another reason to be joyful, of course. So Moses was born and passed away at the age of 120. He was exactly 120 years old when he passed away. And this happened on Zayin of Adar, the 7th of Adar. So of course the birth of Moshe is an extremely happy occasion, because Moshe was the one to take us out of Egypt, to make us into who we are, to shape the Jewish people as they are today. And in fact, this would be the beginning of the Jewish religion, the Jewish nation, and the Jewish Torah. Moshe was the beginning because he was the leader that was taking us out of Egypt, that made us into the nation. So we find that the month of Adar, other than Purim, which is a very joyful holiday, we find another thing that happened on Adar, the Zayin, the 7th of Adar. And we have also another happy occasion that happens on Adar. Oh, by the way, with regards to that, it's interesting. This year we have 2 Adar, right? The Adar Aleph and Adar Bet. Now there's a difference between Ashkenazi and Sephardi Jews. If somebody has a birthday or someone has a yortzeit on the month of Adar, when do they commemorate it or celebrate their birthday? So somebody's a passing day of a relative. So according to the Ashkenazi way, and you do yortzeit on the 1st Adar and birthday on the 2nd Adar. So in fact, it can happen the same day, will be celebrated twice. So we have the multiple, putting more joy, because you have 2 Adars, like this year, we have 60 days of joy. Could you imagine 30 days? This year we have to have 60 days. Don't worry, we're already in day 40 something, so you're catching up a little late, but you only got 20 more days to be extremely joyous. Yes, I like that smile. So on the month of Adar, we have many happy moments, and it's a day of privilege, when we set up Purim. Whereas in the month of Av, in the summer, there's several sad moments. We spoke about the destruction of the first temple, the destruction of the second temple, the sin of the spies. What happened in the sin of the spies? Since the spies went to Israel, Moses had sent 12 people to Israel to spy on the land, and they came back with bad news. They said, we shouldn't go to Israel. Israel is crazy. Everybody's Jewish there. No, that's not what they said. But they said, don't go. It's a crazy country. People are eating each other. Eretz Ochelet Yoshvea. And only 2 of them only said good thing, right? Joshua and Caleb, Yoshua and Caleb. And Hashem said, you went for 40 days to Israel and you decided you don't want to come, you don't want to get in, Yom Lashana, a day a year, 40 years, you would have to stay in the desert, and this generation would pass away, and only the next generation would come. That news they came back on the 9th of Av. Ever since, every year, during 40 years of the desert, they used to dig graves on the eve of the 9th of Av, the night of 9th of Av. They used to dig graves and sleep in these graves, and a portion of the people did not get up. So this was how that generation had vanished. That's how that generation had stopped in the desert, and only the new generation was the one to enter the land of Israel. So every year for 40 years, they used to dig their graves. Would you imagine on the 9th of Av to sleep in a grave, knowing that a person might not get up, might not be up the next morning? It is, by the way, that's the reason why it's so joyous. It says the 15th of Av, Tu Be'av, Chamishasar Be'av. It says it's a very joyous moment, because that was the 40th year before they entered the Holy Land, and they knew the practice. Everybody's digging graves, and they dig the graves, and they go to sleep, and they wake up, and everybody's up. Nobody's dead. So they thought, because they didn't have calendars or clocks or iPhones, so they thought, probably, the way the moon looks like, maybe now is not the 9th, maybe it's the 8th, tomorrow is the 9th, and they went to sleep in their graves another night, and again everyone gets up, and then again the next night, until the 15th. Of course, the 15th is a full moon, and they realized that indeed the decree was over, and no one is going to die any longer, and everyone who is there will enter the land of Israel.
When they woke up, they said Mishabera.
They probably were extremely excited to see. Oh, look who's up! I thought you're dead. This term could get a whole new meaning. Yeah. If I'll wake up in the morning, like I said it. Anyways, so several sad moments, and it's a day of sorrow on the month of Av, and of course at the month of Adar, it's a day of privilege, and that's what the Rebbe explains. The distinction between Av and the rest of the month is that in Av there were multiple negativities which occurred to the Jews: the destruction of the two temples, the sin of the spies, following which the godly promise of this day being such a generation to come, as we explained, that they will die on this day. So too the month of Adar features not only Purim, but also the 7th of Adar, Moses' birthday. So the Rebbe explains that indeed the birthday of Moshe, the birthday of Moses, shows us that the whole month is a lucky one. The whole month is a good one. And and that's why some people fast on the Zayin of Zayin Adar, on the 7th of Adar. That's why even the people who fast, because it's an auspicious day, would only fast on the first month of Adar. But on the second month of Adar is completely dedicated to the part of joy. So, but that brings us to, we got a little more explanation on what Adar is and why it's so special. But then again, it brings us back to the question, how could we be forced to be happy? Even if we get all the reasons in the world, how could we really keep ourselves in a high spirit for 30 days throughout the month of Adar? How could somebody be forced to be happy? Either you're happy or you're not happy. It doesn't matter what day it is, or what's the calendar saying, or what month we're at. If somebody's happy, they're happy. So just before we enter into that, we want to see what could you benefit from being happy? What you could derive from being joyous? Now I know it's kind of not only limited to Judaism. There's other religions. You showed me a book about happiness that's not Jewish per se, but then it's reiterated in Judaism of through joy a person could really act more than what they could without it. And there's a story with there's a guy, it's a parable from ancient days. There was a guy in the shtetl, in the village. His name was Tuvia. This is Chicago. Okay, I only took this picture for a river, for water. Okay. So this guy's name is Tuvia, and this Tuvia is, what is a macher? Macher? You know what is a macher? He's a macher. He's a guy, Steve, what's macher? Macher is a guy who knows everyone, and he knows how to handle things, and knows how to run projects. He's a big macher. This Tuvia was a big macher. Anyway, he actually opened a whole court in his backyard. People used to fight with each other. You come for Tuvia. And Tuvia used to say, you pay him what he says, you don't pay, and everybody were happy. He was a big macher, he knew everyone. And one day, the governor of the shtetl realized that there's a guy, a macher, who does everything, he runs the whole show without me. The governor wasn't really happy that he's not being visited, and when you go to get a court case, you have to pay penalty, you have to pay fee, you have to pay fine. All that stays with Tuvia, our friend. He charges maybe less, but he pockets everything, right? No, nothing to the government. So the governor summoned Tuvia to come see him. And Tuvia, of course, being a big macher, knew what that means. He said, if I'm going, I'm not coming back. So I'm not going. So he decided he's not going, and he wants to run away. He wants to run away, and he runs away to the city, knowing that the governor would probably send people to look for him. And he gets to a river. And he doesn't know how to swim. Our friend Tuvia, he wants to go to the other side of the river to continue his flee from the governor. And our friend Tuvia doesn't know how to swim. Now, he was a big macher, right? He was a big guy, a very big guy, a fat guy. A gesute macher, right? And he sees this old sailor, and a person who was there, and he works by the river, and he says, do me a favor, help me go to the other side. What do you mean help you? How can I help you? He said, you know who I am? Tuvia. Oh, Tuvia! Yeah, I'm not gonna help you, all right? Yeah, of course, everybody loves you. Everyone loves you. You're a macher. You can make it work for me. You can work my magic. Sure, I'll help you, whatever it takes. He says, grab me on your back. They go into the water, and this old guy grabs Tuvia with whatever he could and starts swimming, and he's taking him slowly. As they almost reach the other side of the river, the old guy says to Tuvia, let me ask you, what's the rush? What are you going to the other side? He says, don't ask. Whoa, what is it? He says, oh, listen, the governor is after me. I lost everything. He says, what do you mean you're not going to help me any longer? You're not Tuvia the Macher? He says, yeah, I'm Tuvia, but I don't know what I can do for you anymore. I'm broke. I left everything behind. I'm just afraid for my life. And as he said that, the old guy lost his grip of Tuvia. And the poor guy, the big guy, sunk into the river. When he was questioned later, the old guy, and they said, well, what happened? He said, he asked me to help him go to the river, and I took him. And as we they said, why didn't you, schlep him all the way? There's always a little distance, a very short distance left to the other side of the river. He said, I don't know, but as long as I felt like I'm doing something, someone who could help me, I was energized. As soon as he told me there's nothing with him, he looked like a big fat old guy. I didn't mean to kill him. I didn't want him to drown. I had nothing against him. I lost my grip. I lost my strength. I lost my energy. As soon as I was realizing that I'm really not doing anything for me, it was very selfish of the guy, of course. He wasn't the righteous guy to write a story about, but it's a parable, of course. He said, I lost grip. I didn't mean on doing anything to him. In fact, the miracle was that I was able to schlep him all the way to almost the other side. That was the miracle. When I lost grip, it was natural. I'm a skinny guy, and he's very fat, and he obviously needs a lot of attention and many risks. So as soon as I realized that nothing is happening psychologically, I lost grip, and unfortunately I lost the guy. So with regards to that, simcha, being happy, is important because it energizes you, because it lets you utilize your abilities. It lets you take advantage of who you are and do it to the utmost capability that you have. Because when somebody's happy, he's maximized. He's able to do things that he's not able to. He's efficient, he's concentrated, he's oriented, he's straightforward, he knows what he's doing, he's taking challenges one by one, and he's successful. He doesn't take things too difficult. He doesn't get into this whole melancholy status where things don't work out. When a person is sad, he could be the same person, but he loses all that. He loses all those capabilities. And that's what Tanya brings, the Alter Rebbe brings in chapter 26, right? Being joyous enables a person to reach his or her maximum potential. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. Truly, this should be made known as a cardinal principle, that as with a victory over a physical obstacle, such as in a case of two individuals who are wrestling with each other, each striving to throw the other. If one is lazy and sluggish, he will easily be defeated and thrown, even though he be stronger than the other. Exactly so it is in the conquest of one's evil nature. It is impossible to conquer it with laziness and heaviness, which originates in sadness and in a heart that is dulled like a stone, but rather with, what's this word? Alacrity, which derives from joy and from a heart that is free and cleansed from any trace of worry and sadness in the world. The Alter Rebbe says you have two people fighting with each other. One of them is weaker. One of them is weaker, but he's quick. He's quick. He's got the grip. He's got the hold. He could win. He's quick. What's quick? Zrizut. Zrizut comes from joy. Comes from happiness. He's quick. He's oriented. This guy is a gigantic monster. He could crush him if he wants to, but he loses it. Or he's too heavy. He's too heavy that he can't move. When a person is sad, they're heavy. They're tight. They're not sure what's going on. They're dull, like a stone, it says. The Alter Rebbe says, if you want to defeat your evil inclination, רוצים לנצח את היצר הרע, צריך בזריזות הנמשכת משמחה. כך מופיע באדמו"ר הזקן פרק כ"ו בתניא. So that's what Hasidim used to say. Simcha is not a mitzvah. Simcha is not a mitzvah. But joy is not a mitzvah. But it leads. It's a gateway to all the other mitzvot. Sadness is not a negative prohibition. It's not a prohibition. But it's a gateway to all the other prohibitions. Again, joy is no mitzvah. But it leads to all the mitzvot.
My very good friend's name is Simcha.
Oh.
He's not very happy.
Okay, well that happens too.
For me, being happy is almost a duty because it's
Not only to you.
out of gratitude to Hashem and to everyone around us who has been kind to us.
Right.
It's a duty, and why limit it to 30 days? I think we should be happy every day.
I agree.
Yeah, every day. And remember the Psalm 150, the very last one,
Yes.
which says that we should rejoice with
Kol
instruments,
haneshama.
with dance.
Yes,
with
yes,
songs,
yes.
everything.
Exactly.
Even mountains should dance.
I agree. I
We
completely.
should be so happy just to be alive.
Yes.
And probably Ruben knows that you have a great singer, Mercedes Sosa, in Argentine. You know the song Gracia la Vida.
I kind of remember it, yes.
Yeah,
Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto.
Gracias a la vida. Thank you for life.
Thanks to life, which
Yeah.
has given me so much.
Thanks for many other things.
Okay, I agree. I would never disagree with that statement. Of course, we should be happy all our lives. Yeah, we'll try to find out.
Even in times of hardship, and this is when we should be especially happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think every day there are many little things in the middle of sadness which can make us happy if we only have eyes to look at.
Correct. We actually mix in every joyous moment. We actually mix also sadness. That's why in the wedding we break the glass, right? We break the glass because we want to symbolize the destruction of the temple. So yes, there are periods in life where a person is supposed to be sad, not sad as an egocentric way, but sad for what had happened to our nation, to our people, sad for the Holocaust, sad for the Crusades. So with the duty to be happy, there's also times that a person is not necessarily happy, but those are just momentary. It's just timed. You're right that the joy should not be timed. But of course, we derive the joy from this month, from the month of Adar. So why the Hasidim used to say that the mitzvah is not a duty of joy, the joy is not a mitzvah, but it's a gateway to all mitzvot, and the sadness is not an averah, it's not a negative commandment, but it is a gateway to all prohibitions, because the evil inclination doesn't look for us to do something wrong. He's looking for the sadness that comes after. When somebody does something wrong and they realize they did something wrong, there's this feeling, this emotion of sadness that fulfills them for doing the wrong thing, for taking the wrong decision. I'm sure you all know what I mean. When somebody does something wrong, it feels bad. They feel bad. They did something they said something to someone that they shouldn't have said. Maybe they were right, and the other party started, and it was their fault altogether. But when I say something wrong to someone, I'll come back home, I'll lay my head on the pillow, and I'll think, this is wrong what I did. I'm not happy with it. I'm quite sad. That sadness is actually the key to everything, because the evil inclination tells you you're a loser, you're a nothing, you're worthless, you just did the most terrible, miserable mistake of your life. You just said something or did something or refrained from something, and that is the gateway to everything, because when a person feels they're useless and they're worthless and they're stupid, then they say, what do I have to gain? I'm already down there. There's nothing for me to gain. I might as well go continue descent, continue going down. So when a person has that sadness, it's not the sadness that, the negative commandment that was violated, that God is not happy with. It's the evil inclination that likes this so much that a person is sad, because that's the opening to everything after that would follow. Because once the person is sad, once the person is not in the mood, then they're down. And when they're down, they could really go down. They could really do things that would bring them even further to a lower level. And this is why we have to understand, the Rebbe brings many times what the Zohar says, that the joy is happy in order to receive abundance from above. That the same face that a person shows here, that he's also shown from above. The way we act to each other, the way we act to ourselves, is the way Hashem acts to us. And when a person is able to overcome the obstacles and still be joyous, so Hashem would overcome the obstacles that I put to him. Hashem wants to bless me with all these things, but what can I do? I'm not worthy. I'm not doing all the right things, and I might doing some of the wrong things. So if you go by law, I don't deserve to be blessed with all that. But if I'm able to overcome in this world, and yet being cheerful, and yet being joyous, Hashem says, oh, okay, he's overcoming. I'm going to overlook everything else, and I'll give him the abundance that he wants. Not necessarily that he deserves, but that he needs to get. And even though I've done the wrong things, I can still get the abundance. So here is what Elizabeth said, that simcha, the joy, is a duty. It's a duty, but it's not only a duty, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be happy. It's a privilege to be joyous. And really what comes to mind is, with all understanding, what's the practicality? How can a person become joyous out of nothing? So there's a story I told you several times. You wanted to comment?
Is Aleinu also a duty too?
Aleinu is the beginning. Aleinu l'shabach. We should give thanks. So that's a duty. Yeah, the words of duty. So there's a story with. I brought it several times. We saw the video once or even twice about this couple who were about to get married, and just before the wedding was supposed to be on a Sunday. On Thursday, they went into a private audience with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And normally it's a custom, they go in and they ask for a blessing, they get a blessing, they stay 40 seconds and they leave. As they walked in, and the bride says to the Rebbe, I'd like to speak to you privately, without the groom. So would you ask him to leave, to get out of the room? And the Rebbe said, could you leave? And he walks out, and the secretary of the Rebbe comes jumping and says, no, that's not the way we do things here. You can't be out and she's in. Either you both are in or you both are out. He said, well, that's what the Rebbe said. Well, that's what the Rebbe said. So she stays and speaks to the Rebbe for several minutes, 5, 10, 7, whatever minutes. And then she walks out, and then they don't talk to each other because they're about to get married, so they're not supposed to exchange too much. And the next time they meet is several days later under the chuppah. And after the wedding, after the chuppah, they go into the room, right? You remember the room that we said? They go into the room, that's only them, themselves. And then he's asking her, what happened with the Rebbe? What was the story? You asked me to walk out and you were left alone. What happened? Why did you ask me to walk out? And she tells him that she shared with the Rebbe that she wants to call off the wedding. Calling off the wedding? Why calling off the wedding? Remember that story I sent it to you? Why call? She said that she's a very impatient person. She gets annoyed very easily, and she gets anxious very, very easily over simple, minor things. But that's her nature. and she feels sad for the guy. He's a beautiful, great guy. He's a nice guy, and she feels that she's going to make his life into hell. She doesn't want to make his life miserable. So she says to the Rebbe, I want to call off the wedding. Poor guy. He's a great guy. I'm sure he'll find a nice woman to get married to, but he doesn't deserve to marry me. I'm all annoyed. I'm always impatient. I'm always, when they meet and they say good things to each other and hearts are in the air, you don't reveal that. But once we get married and live together and things are starting to happen, I'm going to grow completely out of it, and he will just regret this day for the rest of his life. So the Rebbe tells her, hold it. He says, nobody's calling off anything. He says, you saying you're impatient, I want to tell you that you're going to have children. And not only you're going to have children, you're going to have many children. And he says, children brings patience. That's the nature of children. You cannot be impatient with children. They'll teach you what patience is about. They'll teach you how to be patient. And he says, so until you have children, I'd like you to go and volunteer in a place, a nursery, a place with children. You want to be with the children, be around children. The rest of you can't really get annoyed at them. They're so cute and so little, and they do things unintentionally, and then they smile at you, and you can't really do much. They teach you patience. So he says, until that happens, until you have your own kids, go volunteer in a place of children, and everything will be okay. The end of the story was that she didn't have children for quite some time, and then they went to the doctor, and the doctor said there was an infantile womb. She could never have children, but she actually had, 15 children with an infantile womb that physically she couldn't have children, but the Rebbe said she's going to have many children. She had 15 children. Anyway, Mazel Tov. 15 children, yeah. I'll show you, if you want, I'll show you the video now. I'll show you the video. So, the message of the story, one of the messages of the story, is that you're not born with it, but you could train yourself to be like that. You're not born with patience, but you train yourself to be patient. And the same thing with joy, and with being joyous and with being happy. You don't necessarily have it at the starting point, but you could surely train yourself to be like that. I didn't know you before you were so joyous. Maybe you weren't as joyous as you are now, but
you make me joyous.
Oh no, really, I'm serious now. In Yiddish we say gliklach. Gliklach. Ze gam ushar vegam bar mazal. You're fortunate. You're fortunate to be joyous. But fortunate is when you were born like that. But most people are not born happy. But we train ourselves to be happy. Like Elizabeth said, look around you. Be grateful to the fact you woke up this morning. Be grateful for animals and plants. Be grateful for having food on your plate and a roof above your head. These are all the things we take for granted, and many people unfortunately don't have them. Yeah, so you have 5 cars and not 6 cars. Okay.
No, it's not. This one's 7?
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question. Is there something about the Torah, about in the Talmud, that 300 years ago, a lot of times if you have rain, or maybe something, or drought, you were in trouble. So a lot of people were joyous then?
Yeah, well, you know what? When life was more simple, it was easier to be joyous. With the stress of life and with things having to be right here, right now, it's more challenging to be joyous. First of all, this element of envy, right? Yeah. How could I be joyous if he's got a better whatever than me, right? This whole thing. It wasn't. Back in the day, you had a cow, your friend had a sheep. Where could you go with that? What could you go around that? So that's what the Rebbe explains. When Adar begins, you become happy. What does it mean you become? You train yourself to be happy. This is a month of training. Would you imagine taking a new position, a new job, and a part of the job is training, right? You're trained to do, I don't know, what is it? Oh, you teach English. You don't need much training for that, not in Taiwan at least. But you take a job, and the first period of a job is training. So the month of Adar is like a training period. And that's what Elizabeth said, the practice is the whole year round. This month is the training month for being joyous. So we have a happy holiday in between, and we have the day that Moses was born, but basically we're in a training period. We're training ourselves to be happy. And that's what the Rebbe explains. Maimonides' words are that the rejoicing is a great work. Indeed, it is truly something that requires tremendous strength, and it has to do with one changing their own nature and habits. And that's what he writes in the letter. One could easily see that the effect of occurrences in one's life is solely dependent on the person himself, how he or she accepts them and responds to them. Do we have a better example than Maimonides himself, who had a life filled with turbulences and disasters, heavens forbid, and yet his outlook of life was optimistic as ever? On the other hand, sometimes we encounter people which seemingly have a good and easy life, and yet they never seem to be content or satisfied. Maimonides, who wrote that it is a duty to be happy, had a very hard life. He had to do all these tricks to become a doctor. He lost his son. His son who he liked the most. He lost his brother. His life was not really easy. He wasn't having a great time altogether, but he felt that it is a duty and it is an obligation to be happy, and he brought this about as an instruction, as one of the Jewish laws. So let's be practical a bit. What do we need to do in order to put ourselves in the state of happiness, of joy? What is it that we could do? This is the month of training. We're in training now. Now let's study. What does it mean to be happy? How can we do that? So this relates a little bit to what we were talking all these few weeks about the high priest, the tabernacle. We're talking about the garments of the high priest. The garments of the high priest used to wear 8 specific garments that were for glory and for honor. Lechavod u'letifaret. That's how it's. Those clothes, those garments were made out of very expensive piece of fabric. It was made with gold. Every thread, it says you have 6 threads of something and another thread of gold. And
not just a thread.
yeah, stitch in his garment was made out of gold, and it was so impressive that the Gemara is saying about Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great, that back then he was the biggest ruler that lived. He was an emperor, right? He was a macher and an emperor. And he says that the Gemara is telling us that Alexander the Great went through Israel in one of his journeys, and Shimon HaTzadik was the high priest who came to greet him, and he came to greet him with the garments of the high priest. So Alexander the Great got so excited of the look of the high priest that Alexander the Great, went down from his horse and bowed down to him. Now Alexander the Great bows down to no one, but to Shimon HaTzadik with the high priest, with the garments of the high priest, made such an impression on him, on Alexander the Great, that he bowed down to him.
Wait a minute, there's a priest. These guys are Kohanim, right?
Kohanim, yes.
He's actually the top guy?
Yeah, the high priest.
He's the guy that goes in on Yom Kippur?
Correct.
I thought they had factions, they had Jews who would go in.
No, for Yom Kippur, it was only...
For all the time who's going in.
What is it? That's how it's called in English. It's not my translation. That's how Kohen. He says Kohen is not the priest. That's how it's called in English. That's common English. Yeah.
But I'm saying, so he's the guy.
He's the right. So the question we have: why does the Kohen need all that garment and gold? He's working for Hashem. He doesn't have to put impression on anyone. He's in the service of God. He's blessing the Jews. What does it matter if he wears gold or wears copper or wears all these metals and all that impressive and glamorous clothing? What does he need all that? And in fact, it is needed. Shulchan Aruch says that when a person prays, when a person davens to Hashem, prays to Hashem, the garments he's wearing have an effect on that person. Physical things that we do or we wear has an effect on our spirituality as well. The priest was asked to be dressed properly, more than properly, to be outstanding. Why? Because it's a tool to serve God with. And here's the Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law says, prayer is a place of sacrifice, korbanot. And therefore one must be careful to follow the format of sacrifice with respect to intention and not let other thoughts mix in, similar to unrelated thought, which would nullify sacrifices. It is appropriate that one should have special nice garments for prayer, like the clothing of the Kohanim. Though understandably not everyone can spend the money on this, and in any case it is appropriate to have special pants of prayer for the sake of cleanliness. Shulchan Aruch says, you want to pray to God? Wear nice clothes. Wear nice clothes? That makes no sense. God cares about your clothes. God doesn't care about your clothes. You care about your clothes. When you dress nicely, it affects your mood. Somebody looks like $1 million, look like $1 million. You know that expression? They look, somebody's they're dressed nicely. And we Hasidim, we try always when I need to pray, I'll put my jacket, I'll put my hat. Nothing like $1 million. My jacket and my hat, you've seen them. I wouldn't sell them on eBay. I don't think I'll make $1 or $2. But anyways, it's just that feeling, that notion that you do something special. You wear a special garment praying to God. It's not about God. It's about me. Yeah, and a beautiful one.
Well, one question: that the outfit that the Kohen is wearing, does he wear that into the Holy of Holies? Like
The Holy of Holies is only plain white.
Just plain white.
Yeah, plain white.
That's it up.
Yeah.
Will he come to there and change his clothes later?
Right, he would change 5 times.
Okay.
Yeah, he changed 5 times his
So
clothing.
when they tie a rope to his leg, he's wearing white.
Right, all white. That's why Yom Kippur we wear all white. Uh-huh.
5 times now?
So here's what Sefer HaChinuch explains. Okay, the 3 garments of the soul. We were talking about the garments. Okay, I skipped that. Sefer HaChinuch says that when you do that, it makes you feel better. So he says that what are the garments? The garments of the soul, we have thought, speech, and action. Those are called the garments of the soul. Those are the 3 constant garments that we always wear. We always have thought wandering. We usually say something and we act. These are the things that are considered levushei nefesh, the garments of the soul. And in fact, in order to change our conduct, in order to be happy, we have to change those clothes, the thought, the speech, and action. How do we do that? So here, first we start with action. So action is acts of joy. Maimonides' laws of Yom Tov. On these days, a person is obligated to be happy and in good spirit. He, his children, his wife, the members of his household, and all those who depend on him. As Deuteronomy states, and you shall rejoice in your festival. What is implied? Children should be given roasted seed, nuts, and sweets. For women, one should buy attractive clothes and jewelry according to one's financial capacity. Men should eat meat and drink wine, for there is no happiness without partaking of meat, nor there is happiness without partaking of wine. So Maimonides says, you want to be happy? Start by doing happy things. Okay, it makes you happy, go shopping. It makes you happy to get a good meal, get a good meal. Your children want to be happy, buy them candies, buy them toys, buy them things. Here you have an example. Just showing us walking with the candy.
This is about the Hagim Doraita.
Correct.
As
But
the law, but it's probably recommended for a Hag that is Darabanan.
exactly, yeah, we have on Mishteh V'Simcha, on Purim itself, we have that commandment of rejoicing in a feast. So Maimonides says, first start with action. Do happy things. Do happy things and you see how that affects you. Second thing is speech. All matters of benedictions are to do with joy. When a person wakes up in the morning and says, Modeh Ani, followed by all the morning blessing, which enlists the grace of God that God did with him or her, it is understood that this brings joy to his or her heart. That's what Elizabeth said in a different language. Gratitude to God, benedictions, blessings, speech of joy. Okay, you're having a tough day. Say words of joy. Think about the good things in life. Say it. Don't leave it in the world of thought. Right? We say, what's the verse? I forgot the verse in... okay, I'll remember in a second. A verse that says when you say something, it actually affects you. So the actions of joy, the speech of joy, and of course the thought of joy. In Hebrew, besimcha is the letters of machshava. Machshava besimcha, which means that thinking thoughts of joy completely affects you to a state that you can really change your way. So changing actions is easier. Changing your speech is a little harder but manageable. Changing your thought is the hardest part. But you have to have all the other steps prior to that in order to change your thought. So try to concentrate on the good. Try to find what's good, and you'll find it. If you really look for it, you'll find it. Even in a tough day, even in a tough period, even between jobs, when things don't go well and things don't work out, you might still find reasons to be happy. Not only find those reasons, speak about it out loud, bring it to an attention of yourself and others, and also act it. Do something around it, and you will see how that affects you, how that influences you completely. And we'll end it with a scientific fact. This is a research that was done a few years ago, which happiness makes you smile, everybody knows, but the research says that smiling makes you happy. When you smile, there's, what's the name of the hormone? I think,
Endorphin?
I don't remember the name, but there's a hormone that once you change the way, right, there's a hormone that's being taken, and that affects your mood. So not only does happiness make you smile, but actually smiling makes you happy. So on this token, I can tell you that next week is Purim. And as we said, we are in a training period. Purim is going to be on Wednesday night and Thursday. Wednesday night, we're probably going to do something here. But Thursday is the big party that happens in K Hotel Dunan. That's about 5 minutes walk from here. Did I send you? I'll send you the address again, K Hotel.
That's fine. You don't send me anything. You don't want me to go, do you?
Give me your phone. Give me your phone. I'll show you that it's on your phone.
You'd be happy now you're not coming, would you?
No need to send me. You're always
And Jay told me, I corresponded with Jay. He said, if Richard's coming, I'm coming.
Really? That's
So
nice.
yeah,
We all meet here, we walk
He's
together.
coming back the day before.
yeah. How do you know? Yeah, you know that's
All
what.
meet here, we walk
He's on
together.
my floor.
Yeah. Okay. So you're right. So, anyways, Purim is coming, and being joyous is really what is required. So start the training now, sooner than later. Acts of joy, speech of joy, thoughts of joy, and you will be joyous completely. That's the only way around it.
Start drinking now, is what he wants to do?
I wasn't aiming there. I honestly saying I don't think drinking is such a good thing to begin with. I mean, it's okay.